Hello everyone and welcome to the channel, and I'm here for a different kind of video for you guys. This is a video that I thought about making for quite a bit now, just kind of going through my history musically. And if you know me well enough, my preferred genres of music are, of course, rock and metal. But this is just my journey, and this is going to be a video of the bands that introduced me to rock and metal, the bands that got me into these genres. Of course, be going through my story on how it all started, how I got into rock, and then how I got into metal. Back in the day, you know, I just mostly listened to whatever my parents listened to, if they had, you know, something playing in the car during car rides or something. And that was literally the only time I would listen to music, is like the only time, like during car rides when I was younger and whatnot. So it wasn't until I was like 15 or so when I got into my first band. My first band was, of course, Breaking Benjamin. And even before I got into Breaking Benjamin, like, I knew that, like, my tastes were kind of surrounded by music that is a little on the edge, I guess, you know, because, well, I was kind of a loner growing up, you know, in school and stuff. I was never popular or anything like that, you know, and a lot of the popular kids in school, at least where I went to high school, a lot of them really liked rap music. I mean, rap music was definitely a very big thing when I was in high school. And that was never really my thing, and I was never a very popular individual. So, you know, I feel like to a certain degree, there's a lot of people that, you know, look for music that I guess kind of resonates with them the most. And I guess that kind of music with a certain edge to it, you know, a certain heavy guitar tone was kind of the thing that I was looking for. And Breaking Benjamin was that band that I was looking for, I guess. They were the band that really started it all for me. And the album in particular that really did it for me, my first Breaking Benjamin album, is, of course, Dear Agony. I know a lot of people say that this is one of their best, and I think it is their darkest sounding album. Now, if you were to ask me if I was still 15 or 16 what my favorite Breaking Benjamin album was, I probably would have told you this one. Nowadays, it's kind of a toss-up between this album and Phobia. Now, I do think objectively Phobia is a better record, but I think for nostalgia reasons, Dear Agony would maybe take the cake, but both very solid records for sure. But of course, I mean, back in the day, I mean, I have a lot of memories with this album, some songs that I definitely have some nostalgia for. Even the lyrical themes of this album I could really resonate with, because the lyrical themes of this album were definitely very emotional. At the time, I thought that, you know, this band was like the greatest thing ever. I still think that this album kind of holds up to this day, even though I don't really listen to this style of music anymore, this, I guess, edgier 2000s hard rock, but I still think it's a solid album. So, Dear Agony by Breaking Benjamin, this is an album that definitely meant a lot to me. And after I got into Breaking Benjamin, you know, I got into bands that are alike, such as 3 Days Grace and Red. And then after that, I moved on to music that is a little bit heavier. In 2014, I, of course, got into the band Demon Hunter. And Demon Hunter was not only my first metalcore band, but they were my first metal band, which I know is kind of an unusual start. And I just remember really loving Demon Hunter's music, and I remember going to FYE, and I just remember I wanted a Demon Hunter album. I didn't care which one it was, I just wanted to get anything Demon Hunter. So I ended up getting the newest album that they had out at the time, which was, of course, in 2014, and their newest at the time was their album Extremist. And, you know, this album, I think it's a solid album, and it's one of my personal favorites from Demon Hunter, to be quite honest. I really do enjoy this album. I mean, I still think it holds up, and this was technically my first metalcore CD that I ever purchased. And Demon Hunter is definitely a very good gateway when you're trying to get into metalcore, or if you're looking for metal that relies heavily on melody, because Demon Hunter has plenty of melody to their music. And I think metalcore, all in all, is just a good gateway if you're looking to check out metal, especially if you're already into bands like Breaking Benjamin, for example. So Extremist, that was my first Demon Hunter album, and I still think it's a really good album to this day. So after that, I got into other metalcore bands like As I Lay Dying and We Came as Romans, and a few other bands as well. So shortly after I started discovering bands alike that were in metalcore and, you know, bands that created music like that, I then saw a video that had to do with why people should explore classic metal and modern metal as well. And of course, as someone that only listened to more modern stuff, I didn't really care at first. And I did check out the video because this was a video from someone that I did know. And I checked out the video and I honestly thought, he's right. You know, this was coming from someone that really could care less about anything that came from the 70s and the 80s. And I know that I've talked about this subject before, and I've grown to be very passionate about this subject. And so, because of that video, I looked into some of these old school heavy metal bands like Iron Maiden and Metallica. And you know, even at the time, I thought, okay, even if I do get into some old school metal bands, it's probably going to be only a few bands, and then I'm just going to keep exploring mostly modern stuff. Obviously, that didn't end up happening. It ended up being the complete opposite. But whenever I did explore the classic era of metal, there was one band that really had my attention. There was one band that I thought, wow, I really do enjoy this band's music. You know, I learned to go into this band with a very good mindset, and I think that they were a solid band, and I still think that they're great to this day whenever I check these guys out, and the band is Metallica. Now, the CD that I first purchased from Metallica is Master of Puppets, which is often considered one of their best, if not their best. To me, it's probably my second favorite Metallica album, and it's obviously a classic, of course. There's no going wrong with this album. This was not only my first classic heavy metal album, but it's, well, of course, my first thrash metal album as well. So yeah, I did eventually get into Metallica, and thanks to Metallica, they pretty much opened up my mind to other legendary classic metal bands. Because I remember after getting into Metallica, I eventually got into Megadeth, Iron Maiden, and Black Sabbath, and the rest is history. I got into so many different bands from this era, whether it was just classic heavy metal, classic thrash metal, you name it. And I really do got to give Metallica all the credit for that, because they were the band that really did help me get into this era. So Metallica, Master of Puppets, I mean, still a great album to this day, of course. Definitely very solid. So, you know, after I got into many other classic heavy metal bands, I did start to get very used to this era of music. I started to have a more open mind, and it did start to get very easy for me to appreciate this era more, given how impactful this era was for rock and metal. So I did start to get used to it more, and I actually started to appreciate it, of course, and then it got to a point where I decided that I should really look more into classic rock now. The band that really got me into classic rock, or my first classic rock band, is Led Zeppelin. And, you know, I remember checking them out because at this point, you have to remember, I got into Black Sabbath. So Led Zeppelin, they're not that much different from Black Sabbath's style and sound, really. But of course, my first Led Zeppelin album was the debut album, Led Zeppelin 1, and to this day, this is still probably my favorite Led Zeppelin album. And if you're looking to check out classic rock and you don't know where to start, or what's a good gateway album, I would say that this album here would be a very good gateway. So thanks to Led Zeppelin, they really opened up my mind to classic rock, or, you know, older sounding rock, and that includes progressive rock and stuff. And after I got into Led Zeppelin, I got into Rush, who was my first progressive rock band. And then after I got into Rush, I got into bands like Yes, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, King Crimson, and Genesis. And progressive rock is probably one of my favorite genres of rock these days, and I've really grown to appreciate it. So that's kind of where I'm at today. That is basically how I got into rock and metal. I know I've been kind of all over the place in my musical journey as far as the styles of rock and metal that I got into, because, well, I do realize I've gotten into a lot of subgenres. But that can be seen as a good thing, of course, since, well, that is a lot of variety, and because of this, I have a lot of variety to my music collection and my music library, of course. So let me know what you guys think. What are the bands that got you into rock, and what are the bands that got you into metal? Feel free to let me know. So with that being said, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, have a nice day, and take care.